What is the role of religion in our ever-changing world? From the News Channel 5 network, this is Issues of Faith.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Issues of Faith. Glad you're with us. We're talking about a church recommissioned for the next chapter. It's a church in North Nashville, St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Happy to have with us two people who can talk about this and what it might mean for other churches. The Reverend H. Julian Gordy, Bishop Emeritus of the Southeastern Synod of Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Thank you, Bishop, for being here. And Janet Arning, Executive Director of Empowerment Services at Inspiritus. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
I'm going to ask what Inspiritus is in a moment. But Bishop, I'll ask you first. We're talking about St. Paul's Lutheran Church in North Nashville. So what is happening with this church?
Well, St. Paul's is a small congregation on Rosa Parks Boulevard that was founded about 90 plus years ago. And over time, the congregation sort of dwindled away. And under the leadership of former pastor John Swires and with help from Ellen Swires, they kind of began to engage the community at a pretty good level there, pretty deep level. As the congregation declined and they realized they weren't going to be an actual vital congregation any longer, the property in that congregation reverted to the Southeastern Synod of the ELCA, our church, and to continue but the folks in that parish were clear that they wanted the ministry that had been done with the vulnerable people in that area to continue. And so the Synod felt like the best way to do that would be to make sure that Inspiritus received the property with the understanding that they would continue to do that sort of work there.
The Senate could have sold the property. Yeah. But they decided not to do that.
No, decided not to do it.
And I'm going to ask more about that in a moment. Okay. But Inspiritus, so Janet, what is that?
Inspiritus is a nonprofit. It was born out of the merger of Lutheran Services in Tennessee and Lutheran Services of Georgia. So I tell folks it's probably the oldest nonprofit in Tennessee. We were in 1927, started as a William Henson Home for Boys and had various names throughout the years, but it's a social service organization that does a large variety of nonprofit work.
Lutheran-based, and what will you be doing with this church? What will your role be?
Yeah, so really for the last 13 years, we had worked in conjunction with the church to provide services out of that site. We started a women's group for women in North Nashville as a support community. We were doing raised bed gardens for families living in public housing there, teaching people to grow their own food. We had an art-based program for youth in that community. So we did a lot of community building work alongside the church in that area. Took over the pantry program that we run in partnership with Second Harvest Food Bank, and that pantry's been on that site for 30 plus years. And so it's a holistic approach to getting to know families in the community and just being a part of the community.
Now, is there an affordable housing aspect to this?
So there hasn't been, but there is now. We've been there for the last 13 years and seen the gentrification that's gone on, especially in North Nashville. Folks who used to rent in that community are no longer able to afford to live there. And when this came up, when we merged, we started talking about what would be the best use for that property. And knowing that we have affordable housing crisis in Nashville, we started exploring how we could make that happen on this site so that families that have lived there can stay there for time to come.
What do you think about that, Bish? So there's going to be an affordable housing component, and I don't have the number. There are a number of families that are going to be helped. They'll have a place to live. What do you think about that and how we got to that place?
I think it's pretty remarkable. I'll tell you a story about that. Before I retired, when I was still serving in office and we had acquired the property, we wondered what could be done here? And I invited a man named Joe Young, who is on the staff of the larger church, to come down from Chicago. He spent a couple of days, and then we met at the Germantown Cafe, and he had this idea that a building there that would have continue to have the services of the food bank and so forth, offices and so forth. He thought maybe some retail space, and then there would be 3 or 4 stories of affordable housing. And I thought, where the heck do you get the money for that? But it's interesting. We never talked about that with the folks at Inspiritus, but essentially that's what's come out of this, that maybe most people in Nashville know one of the big needs in Nashville is affordable housing. And here is an opportunity to do that in a pretty substantial way.
We've talked on this show that this is a challenging time for churches. Churches are having to reinvent themselves sometimes. We've had people come on this show and say, churches are the future. Churches will save us. And that's great to hear. But sometimes you think, boy, I don't know, there's so many challenges. Yeah. Here, is this an example? If I told you someone is saying churches are going to save us, they're going to save us in the midst of all these struggles churches have and in the division that we have, is this an example of that, or is that too much, or what do you think when I put that out there?
Well, I think that it could be. I'm not really sure. I served a parish on the Gulf Coast, and we regularly had hurricanes that came through. After Hurricane Katrina, I remember one of the city council people from one of the towns there who said, it's the churches that rebuilt this community, because churches, that's one thing churches know how to do, disaster response, and they can stay a long time. Longer than government programs and so forth usually. But on the other hand, I'm not sure. I guess it depends on what you mean by the church saving us.
That is open to interpretation, yes. I like the notion of rebuilding after a hurricane.
Yeah. But I think that in that sense, the church, like lots of organizations in the community, have opportunities to contribute to the larger community, and if that's what you mean, I think churches can do that. I think a little self-reflection says we don't do that terribly well all the time. We're more interested in saving ourselves, But our sense that what we're called to do, I think, as people who are members of the church, as people who are followers of Jesus, is to give ourselves away for the sake of the world. And so I think if we're intent on doing that, we don't need to worry as much about whether we're going to save the world or be saved ourselves. We'll be okay.
Make a difference in our corner of the world.
That's it.
And I'm going to ask you to drill down more deeply into what exactly is going to happen there, but to go back to that thing I was getting at the top of the show, as bishop, you saw where this was a piece of property that was worth a lot of money. One thing could have been just to sell it and then maybe do other great things. But and maybe you see that in other. There are a lot of synods, right, in the Lutheran Church. Maybe other places did that, but you didn't want to just sell this. You wanted to stay in that community. Is that right?
Absolutely. But again, I think it's important to say that that John and Ellen Schweiers and the people left in that community were the folks who were insisting that this is what we want done, and we would want to do what the congregation wanted. That's almost never to sell the property and use the money. It's always, I think, almost always to serve the community in some way.
What did you see from other synods? Take the Northeast, where there might be more churches closing. What are you seeing in other places when something like that happens?
Well, sometimes we see things like this happening, and sometimes, frankly, property is very valuable, and churches are kind of under the gun now, and that helps the bottom line. It keeps you from having to lay off staff and so forth. but again, and it's important to have people to be able to do that. But I think the mission of the church is maybe better served when we're willing to do what the folks at St. Paul and in Spiritus and the Southeastern Synod were able to do here.
That's why I think this is worth lifting up and kind of talking about. And so we have a picture of the church. Can you walk us through kind of how is the affordable housing aspect of this going to work?
Well, so the plan is, and we've gone through all the steps. We're just waiting to break ground this year. We're going to build a really beautiful building on that corner of Rosa Parks and Garfield. It's going to be a 5-story building. The social service work will be in the bottom floor. We'll have a client choice pantry. We'll have an art studio, places for gatherings, for meals, for education, and then we're going to go up 4 stories of affordable housing for seniors. This will be a place where the lowest income seniors in Nashville can come and live independently and live just a wonderful life, staying in that community and being surrounded by some services that they may need as they age in place.
Wow, so it's going to be, we see it there, it's going to be several stories high, 4 or 5 stories, and it's going to be just living places.
Yes, we have 0.71 acres on that corner. So in addition to the church, there's a building right beside it that houses our food pantry right now. So we'll take the whole, every inch of space that we can to ink out for this live, thrive, give community is what we call it.
And how hard has this been to work out? There have to be endless issues as far, codes. I mean, forget the whole church thing. What about just making this work?
Well, I think anybody that attempts to do affordable housing needs to be prepared for a multi-year long process. It's not anything that happens quickly. There's multiple layers of funding stacks that you have to get in place. There's codes, there's rezoning, there's getting the plans together, and so we've been working on this since really diligently since 2021, and we hope to break ground this year. So, it'll be a 5 or 6 year process before we open the doors.
Wow. And Bishop, did you see this coming in your time when you were bishop? Did you knew that you wanted it to be something serving the community? Did you see affordable housing back then?
Well, as I mentioned before, after talking to Joe Young, that seemed to be a great idea. I knew that was a big need in Nashville, and this is a fantastic location for that. And I try, I don't want to be surprised when things go well. But boy, did they go well here. and that's a lot of work. The Nashville City Council was involved in this, and they were terrific. So many partners that came together to make this happen, all of whom I think were committed to this vision that this is not just handing something to somebody who's in need, but helping people learn to thrive, to be able to care for themselves, to look after themselves. So all of these programs do that. Janet mentioned the gardening program that's been going on with Spiritus for a long time, where folks who are living in public housing have small garden plots that it's not just that you get fresh food that way, but it's also, I remember early on in that program, one woman who was a refugee from Africa who was so excited because she had nothing to do here. She had lived in a place where she had provided food for her family, farming, and suddenly, this is a tiny plot, but she's back to doing something that means not just feeding her family, but giving her a meaningful thing to do for her family. So that's the difference between, the kind of handout and the sort of thriving that we're hoping to see take place on account of what's happened at the St. Paul's property.
And what I see over and over is people are desperate to serve. They just want to know where they can make a difference. And they are. They want to make a difference, but they don't know where sometimes to go to make a difference.
Right.
And so this being still connected with the church through Inspiritus,
Yes.
will there be volunteers coming in, and it's an opportunity for people to do some good?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We'll have plenty of, as we do now, need for volunteers in our pantry to stock food, to help folks get signed up for different programs, as well as folks to come in and help weed gardens if we have elderly folks that aren't able to get out there and weed. We just have multiple volunteer opportunities, and this is just going to really expand our offerings of community meals and many ways for people to serve.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back, continue our discussion. St. Paul's Lutheran Church in North Nashville. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.